Okay. It's good. Do you hear me? It's okay? Okay, nice. Hello, everyone. So I will maybe just introduce myself. I'm François Joris. I'm a software engineer at Odoo, especially in the JavaScript framework team. So today I will present to you how to manage the state of your component with all, and I will give you some tips in different situations how to do it. If you have any question during the talk, you can already write it on the pad. It's the link for the QR code. So let's go. So for this presentation, I will just do a to-do list. Yeah, it's a simple project, but it will be good enough for this talk. In this first version, I will have just two features, actually. Just display a list of to-do and an input where you can type something and press enter to create another item. How it works. So to create this with all, I need to create, first of all, my first reactive component. To do it, I just need to extend components who come from all. And to create my first component, the to-do list, I need to define the templates with basically what will be rendered when you mount your component. And in the setup, I need to define my state. So it's basically the data that your component needs to know what it should display. And in my case, I need to have a reactive state. So when I change the state, I need to re-render my component. To do it, I need to use the hook useState. Basically, useState will just take your object and put it in a proxy, a reactive proxy, and it will say to your component, if something you read in this proxy change, you need to render yourself. An example, you can show it in the template. You have a T for each on the state and on the to-do list items. So the T for each will read each items of the to-do list. So because of the use state, if something changes in to-do items, for example, if I add something, the components will be notified you need to render yourself. So you have a second part. The first part of the template is the input. So I just bind a callback function on the event change. Basically, change, it's when you type some character in the input and when you press enter. This code will be triggered. So the code is on the right side of the screen at the end. And it will just add an item. So when I will add this item, the component will be notified you need to render yourself. OK, nice. Now I will add maybe some feature, because it's probably a little bit simple, actually. So I will add a way to edit my message, the message of a to-do, to delete one to-do, and to mark the to-do as done. I will just cross it. The code will begin to increase, and the complexity will increase. So it's probably the good time to split the complexity. And the good solution to do it, it's to split it in a sub-component. So I will introduce the to-do item. So each of them will have its own role, own stuff to do. For the to-do list, it will give you a way to add an item, so the input, basically, keep the global state, so the list of to-do, and it will say, OK, you need to display all of these to-do items. And the role of the to-do items is to give you a way to delete an item, to edit the message, and to mark the to-do as done. So give a way to make it done and to display it like it's done. How we can do it? Because now we need to have a way to communicate between the to-do list and its child, the to-do item. So I will just basically add a to-do item component in the template of the to-do list, and I will pass it a props. So to-do items equal to-do items. I basically pass the object to-do items as a props to the to-do item component. One important thing, it's actually the to-do item is a reactive, because I use useState in the to-do list. And when you pass it as a props, when you pass a reactive, by default, all will put it in a useState in the to-do item. So if something changes in the props, in this case, it will notify the ToDoItem component you need to render yourself. For example, in the ToDoItem, I read the message, and if something else changed the message, it will notify the ToDoItem you need to render yourself. And it's the way you can access to the information to the state of the to-do list. You will use the props.todoitem.message. After now, you need to find a way to edit the state of your main component, so the to-do list. Probably the idea will come first in your head. It will to do something like this, so directly edit the props. But it's not a good practice. In this case, obviously, yeah, it will work. The component will be re-rendered, etc. But imagine the state, the data is a little bit more complex, and when you toggle a task, you need to do something else. For example, send some information to the server, or maybe store the change in your local storage. It's maybe not a good idea to split the logic in more than one file. So I need to introduce the concept of owner. In all, a good practice, it's when you have a state, the state is owned by one component, in my case, the to-do list, and only this component can't update it. And it can give a part of his state or the whole state to a child, but the child will receive it as a props, but he can't update it. It's not a good practice. Yeah, it will work, but you will have probably some issue when your code begins to grow and evolve. And so the props, you can access it, you can read it. It will trigger a rendering if it's a reactive, and you change it. But you can't update it. So now we need to find another solution to update the state of my parent. So I will introduce the callback props. Basically, in the first example, I just pass a ToDoItem, so it's just an object. And in this case, I will pass two other stuff. It's two functions. So it's, in my case, the edit message and toggle done. So basically, the component ToDoItem can directly call this function, and this function will directly edit the state of the to-do item, the to-do list, sorry. So it's how we can do it. So I will just add two props. I will, in my case, create a row function, and I already bind the ID of the to-do in the function. So the ToDoItem receive it as a props, and now it's really easy. You just need to do these props and call this function. And for edit message, call it with the new message. It's very simple, and it's a good practice because all of your code stay in the to-do list. All the update of the state stay in the to-do list. Now, maybe the complexity of the data modelization will begin to grow. Like I said before, you need to send some information to the server and stuff like this. So it's maybe a good idea to split the data modelization and all of this flow from the component. So it maybe it will make the component more reusable because you can just replace the model. And it will be probably more clear when your code begins to grow. So how I will do it, I will just introduce the ToDoList model. So it's basically a JavaScript class. And this JavaScript class will contain a list of ToDoItem model. Each ToDoItem model is just a class. So my component ToDoList will create a new ToDoList model. But it doesn't need to care anymore about the state management, where I need to add an item, if I need to ping the server, etc. It will just call the add function directly on the ToDoList model, and it will pass a ToDoItem model at each ToDoItem component, and the component will do the same thing. It just needs to call the edit message or delete or toggle done on the ToDoItem model. So it's how the code looks. So it's just a basic class. It's not a big deal. So for the ToDoList model, I just create the list at the beginning in the subconstructor, and after I give 2 points of API, a way to add an item and a way to delete it. And so in the ToDoItem model, it will manage how you can edit the message, how you can pass the to-do as done, etc. So you don't need to care about it anymore in your component. You just need to care about the interaction the human interaction, and the displaying will be done by all. So how it looks in the code of a component. So just now, I don't need anymore to pass the toggle done, edit message as a props. I will just pass the ToDoItem model, ToDoItem model to the ToDoItem, and it will just call the function directly on it. So it will be more clear for your code. It's more maintainable in the time. The next step is probably you will arrive in a case like this when your project begins to grow, and you will introduce more and more components. And you will arrive in a situation like this. You will have a parent, so the ToDoList, and you need to share its state to a sub component. In my case, it's the to-do input. So with our actual solution, we will pass the ToDoList model as a props in the component A, and we pass it again to the component B, and we pass it again to the to-do input. It's probably not a good practice, because you will probably create some bugs and some stuff like that. And the component A, B probably don't care about these props, so it's not really relevant to pass it to this component. And the name of this issue is props drilling. It's a well-known issue for every JavaScript framework. For example, React, it will use the context function to manage this issue. Vue.js will use provide and inject. Basically, it will give you a way from a parent component to pass some data, some state, to a child. And you don't need to pass it as a props. And in all, we will have the env. The env, basically, is just an object shared by every component of your application. So it's the same object. So in our case, we can maybe just put the ToDoList model in the env. It will be OK, because I can directly access in the to-do input. It's maybe a good solution, but you probably don't want the app or the component B receive this ToDoList model, because it's not relevant for this component, because it's not a child of the ToDoList. So we have a smart hook to do it in all. It's use subenv. Basically, it will add something in the env, but only in the env of the component who will use subenv and all of its child. So it will encapsulate the logic. And when the ToDoList will be destroyed, unmounted, the list will disappear. No one will have the access anymore. So it's probably a better practice in this case. So how it's look? How you should probably do it? It's to create a hook. For the people who don't know what's a hook, it's basically a function that you can only call during the setup of your component. And in my case, this hook will just give me the ToDoList model in any case, any situation. So I will just use this hook, and I will always receive the model. And in the case of the ToDoList, it will create the model, because the setup of a component, setup of the parent, it's always trigger, always call, before the setup of the child. So in my case, ToDoList setup will be trigger, will be execute before the to-do input setup. So if you check the hook, basically, I check if I have a ToDoList model. So for the ToDoList, it don't already exist. So I will add it in the subenv. I need to put it in a reactive. I will explain it. But I need to put it in a reactive to give the same proxy for every component. And after, I just return this ToDoList model directly from the env. And in the case of the to-do input, you already have the ToDoList model in the env, so we'll just arrive at the last line, return useState. You need to use the useState, because if you put just your component in a reactive, the component will not begin to observe it. You need to use useState to say to the component, you need to observe this reactive, and if you read something inside and you change it, something change in it, you need to render yourself. So it's really important to use the useState in this case, because in the previous case with the props, you don't care about it. All do it for you. And you just need to call the hook you can see directly in the component. And the last step, you probably want to add your work in Odoo and maybe make it always available in any situation. In this case, for example, I want to have in the navbar of my web client, my Odoo web client, I always want a counter with all the to-do that I done already done or something like this. So with our actual solution, put in the env, in the sub-env, it will not work because to-do counter is not a child of ToDoList. If I put it directly in the env, it will not work because I don't know if the to-do list will be set up before the to-do counter. I don't have any link between these two components. So in Odoo Web Client, we have the service concept. So basically a service, it's a code that will be start and return an object. And this code will be start just before you mount the web client. And it will be destroyed when you will unmount the web client. So the service will be still alive during the whole life of your web client when you use during the full utilization of the web client of Odoo. And this service will be put in the env. So basically, each component will just access to the service, and the service will return the to-do list model, and you can read it easily. How it looks? It's very simple. So I just add a service to the category service. In my case, the service is just a start function. The start function will be triggered, will be execute when you mount the web client, just before. And like before, I create a new to-do list model. I put it in a reactive, and I return it. And my hook, to access to it from the component, it will just do use service to access to the service, and it will just take the to-do list model in this service. And again, you need to use useState on it. It's really important to keep the reactivity. So thank you for your attention. I will maybe conclude with one small stuff. I present to you a few tips. But when you arrive in a project, you already need to begin with one component and keep your code the most simplest possible. And if you need to add some concept or the project begin to grow and grow and grow, maybe you need to begin to use some of these tips. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any question, let's go. Thank you. Ok, bah, c'est pas grave.
There are no questions. So.
Yeah. And if someone is interested by the code, the full code, it's in the pad. I put it, the link, directly on the pad. So if you are interested. So, thank you. The Solis. The solution, the slides. I don't know if the slide. We will give an access somewhere, or to be honest, I don't know.
No, actually, the slides are on YouTube. You can find the talk back and see the slides.
Okay, so on YouTube. So if you don't have any question, maybe this. Ouais, je peux. Hop. Hop. Share. Viewer. Hop. Yeah, I just give the link. Is Corebus still available? If you call about core, the legacy core is totally removed from v17. We remove, I think, the biggest part of the legacy file, so you don't should use it, actually. Use that to send event to other widget component. You should probably not do it, maybe create a service. It depends of your use case, probably. If you want, you can come to me with a precise use case, maybe, and I can check with you. So, thank you for your attention, I think. And enjoy the concert tonight, today.